Jai Hind students, the name of the subject is Computer System Security and its code is KNC 301. Today we will be discussing about threats and vulnerabilities. Right? What are actually the threats when we are dealing in terms of computers, and what are the different type of vulnerabilities that we generally use to encounter while dealing with the security in terms of computers. Now, before starting with these threats and vulnerability, it's basic that we need to understand what is computer security. What do we understand by the term computer security? It is simply a technique which refers for ensuring that the data which is stored in a computer cannot be read or compromised by any individual without authorization. That means we can say that only authorized user will be able to access the data. The person who is not an authorized person will not be able to access the data. We'll make sure that the data in the particular system is not basically compromised when we are talking in terms of any sort of access. Now, most computer security measures involve the encryption and again the password of the data. Different type of encryption mechanism, different type of encryption algorithms basically are available, and again password security measures are available which we basically use for securing the system. Now, the purpose of this computer security is to devise ways to prevent the weaknesses from being exploited, right? That is again the major important focus. Now, actually here we are addressing the three important aspects of any computer which is related with any sort of system, such as the confidentiality, the integrity, and again the availability of the data. Now, these are basically the three goals in computer security: confidentiality, integrity, and again the availability. Now, we start with the first one. What is confidentiality? What do you understand by the term confidentiality? It simply ensures that the computer related assets are accessed only by the authorized parties. That means the data need to be confidential and only the authorized person will be able to access the data, right? The unauthorized will not be able to access the system. So, confidentiality is also sometimes called as the secrecy or the privacy. We always want to achieve the confidentiality of the data. Now, second comes is the integrity. What do we understand by the term integrity? It means that assets can be modified only by the authorized party or only in authorized ways, right? If there is any sort of modification need to be done, so that is only done by the party which are the authorized. That means unauthorized will not be able to do any sort of modification in the assets. Now, third comes is the availability. What do we understand by the term availability? Availability simply means these assets are accessible only to the authorized parties at appropriate time. Alright, whenever we want the data should be readily available to us, right? And it should be available only to the person who are the authorized user. The person who are not the authorized user will not be able to access the data. The data should not be available to the unauthorized person. So, it simply means that the assets should be available to the authorized parties that time at specific times when we need that data. Now, one of the challenge in building a secure system is finding the right balance among these different type of goals which often conflict, right? That is basically the issue. Now, I will be discussing about vulnerability, right? What do we understand by the term vulnerability in computer system security? It is a weakness in the security system, right? Vulnerabilities are basically the weakness in the security system. They can appear in any element of a computer. That means we can talk about the hardwares, the operating system, as well as the software, right? They can appear in any particular element of the computer. Any sort of weakness in the security system of a particular in a particular environment is what is called as a vulnerability. Now, the types of vulnerabilities we may find as they apply to the assets again of the hardware, the software, and again in the terms of the data. Now, what is hardware vulnerability? It is more visible than software. Why we are saying that? Because it is composed of the physical objects, right? It is composed of the physical objects. So, they are more visible as compared to software. It is rather simple to attack by adding any sort of devices right? When we are talking in terms of physical objects, by making any sort of changes, by making any type of attacks, by adding different type of devices, we can change different type of devices, the removal of any type of devices, intercepting the traffic, right, or flooding them with the traffic until they can no longer function. So this is again a type of conflict or the type of weakness which occurs because of the hardware or the physical objects, and this is the major issue that we generally used to encounter. Second comes is the software vulnerability. It can be replaced, of course. If we talk in terms of software, it can be replaced, it can be changed or destroyed maliciously, intentionally, or it can be modified, it can be deleted or misplaced even accidentally. Both the ways this issue can work. Whether intentionally or not, these attacks exploits the software vulnerability, right? Whether we are saying that it is destroyed maliciously or we are saying that it is basically misplaced accidentally, both of these particular is going to exploit the vulnerability of the software. Sometimes the attacks are obvious as when the software no longer runs. That means we generally used to say that when the software is not actually running, there might be some of the other type of attacks which are quite obvious. More subtle again, subtle are the attacks in which the software has been altered, but you can say that this seems to run in the normal way, right? That is again another type of issue. Now the next comes is the vulnerability of the data or the data vulnerability. A data attack is a more widespread and serious problem than either a hardware or the software. We have already discussed about the hardware vulnerability and the software vulnerability, but if we are talking about data, this is a major or a more widespread problem as compared to the hardware and the software one. Why is it so? Because data items have the greater public values. They have the greater public values than the hardware and the software, because more people know how to use and interpret the data that they are actually dealing with. Like it is not, we cannot say that everybody actually knows that how you can use any sort of hardware and the software that you are actually going to work with. But it is very easy that we can say that there are a number of people who actually know how you can interpret with the data. So that means we can say that it is only your data items which have the greater public value than the hardware or the software. Now, what are threats? A very important topic in computer system security. A threat to the computing system is a set of circumstances that has the potential to cause any sort of loss or any sort of harm to the system, right? Different type of issues, the circumstances, right, which can cause any type of loss or any type of harm to the system is what is called as a threat. Now, there are many threats to a computer system, including human initiated and again computer initiated type of attacks, right? So different type of threats which have the potential to cause any sort of loss or any sort of harm to the system, right? They can be human initiated or computer initiated ones. Now, a threat is blocked by the control of the vulnerability, and we can view any threat as being one of the four which we are going to discuss now. First is the interception. Now, what is this? It means that some unauthorized party has gained the access to an asset, right? Anything which is valuable to us is what is referred to an asset. So it simply means that the person who is not authorized to gain or authorized to access the asset, right, has basically gained the access to an asset. We generally call it as interception, right? The outside party can be a person, right, can be a program, or again a computing type of resources. Any who is not the authorized one, who is the unauthorized party, and they have gained the access to a particular type of asset. This is what is called as interception. Next is interruption. In an interruption is an asset of the system becomes lost, unavailable or unusable. So this is again a major type of issues like we generally used to encounter, that anything which is valuable to us, that information or that data is basically lost. Or we can say that even if we want the data is not available to us. Or even if the data is available to us, we are not able to use it. The data becomes unusable. So if any of these issue occurs, we generally used to say that interruption of the data is or interruption of the asset is basically taking place, right? The asset or the functionality which is important to us, they become lost or the data become lost. It becomes unavailable. When we need it, it is not available to us, or even if it is available, we are not able to use it. Now, next is the modification, again a very important term. If an unauthorized party not only access the data but tampers with an asset, it is called as modification, right? In a very simple words, we can say that modifying the data, changing the data. So there might be a person or an attacker or an unauthorized person who are not actually interested in fetching the data, who are not actually interested in accessing the assets, but not only interested in accessing the data, interested in accessing the assets, but also making a modification in the particular type of asset. That is what is called as modification. This is again a very dangerous type of threat. Now, the next is the fabrication. What is fabrication? An unauthorized party might create a fabrication of counterfeit objects on a particular type of computing systems. The intruder may insert spurious transactions to a network communication system or add records to an existing database. So this is something which is again going to create a particular type of or a major type of issues, because the intruder or the person who are not the legitimate user of a particular system, they sometimes are quite interested in inserting a type of transaction to the particular network communication, or simply they can add the records to the existing type of database, which is again going to create a different type of or a major type of issue. Now, attacks. What is actually attack? What do we understand by the term attack? A human who exploits a vulnerability perpetrates an attacks on the system, right? Attacking a particular type of system. It can also be launched by another system, as when one system sends an overwhelming set of messages to another, virtually shutting down the second system's ability to function. Different type of attacks are basically occurring these days, and we are actually facing, because we are very much dependent on computers and all, and we cannot separate our life with the type of technologies that actually makes our life easy. But the technology which actually makes our life easy, we cannot forget about the different type of consequences, the type of attacks which that particular system on which we are actually working it, on the particular environment in which we are actually working with, this is going to hamper it. Unfortunately, we have seen this type of attack frequently as denial. This is a very important type of attack. That is what is called as a DOS attack, that is denial of service attack. Flood servers with more messages than they can handle, right? Sending more messages than the particular capacity of a server, right? That is what is called as the denial of service attack. The control is an action, device, procedure or technique that removes or reduces a particular type of weakness in the system or the vulnerability in the system, right? If there is any type of weakness in the system, what are the measures, what are the ways, what are the control measures that are basically taken, with the help of which we will be able to remove or reduce any type of weakness which is occurring into the system. That is what is called as a control. Any sort of action, any sort of device, any sort of procedure or the way which is simply going to remove or reduces the weakness of the system. We use a control again as a type of protective measures, right? Obviously, if any sort of issues are basically occurring, if any sort of like threats or attacks are occurring into the system, definitely we will be asking for any sort of control measures with the help of which we will be able to handle it. There are so many ways to control. First is securing the computer. How you will be able to secure the computer? Choose a web browser which is based on its security and vulnerabilities, because most malware will come through via your web browsers, right? We are supposed to choose a particular type of web browsers based on the type of security what it is going to provide, and again the type of vulnerabilities, because there are different type of malwares which come through when you are browsing anything, when you are doing a type of web browsing. Second is, when setting up, you always try to use a strong set of password, right? Presently, if we see that if we need to encounter and if we need to fill a particular type of password, they generally used to say ki you have to add some special characters, it should be that much long, it should be that much special characters and all. So that is something which is going to say that the hacker should not be able to break it, right? So we always try to use strong passwords in your account. router accounts, etc. As we know that hackers again are more intelligent than you. Okay, so the hackers might use dictionary type of attacks and again the brute force type of attacks to break your particular type of password or to know what the password that you have fed to the system. So it is always recommended, it is generally said, it is generally suggested that while setting up, always try to use a strong type of password so that it is more secure. And again, the hackers or the unauthorized person who are quite interested in fetching your data will not be able to access your data. When downloading software, including even any type of antivirus software, get it from the trusted source, right? The source from where you are getting any type of, you are interested in downloading software, it should be a trusted source. It should not be an untrusted source that you don't even have a trust on that particular source, and even if you are downloading it, this is again going to create a major type of issue. So these are small type of points, but if you need to encounter these small points, this is definitely going to make you more safe in terms of the computers or the terms of security issues that we are generally facing in today's life. Install always good antivirus software. This is always recommended that always install good antivirus software, because antivirus software is designed to deal with modern malware, including the viruses, trojans, keyloggers, rootkits and the worms, right? It should be properly licensed software, and there are number of different type of like antiviruses which are present today. So always try to install or always try to use a proper type of good antivirus software. Download and install a firewall. That is again a very important issue, that always try to install a particular type of firewall, and the basic function of that particular firewall is that it is going to block all the data which is not the legitimate data, you can say. Only the authorized will be able to flow from that particular firewall, right? It is going to block any type of internet attacks. It is going to monitor different type of the connection. It is going to manage the traffic on the particular pieces in which you are actually going to work. So it is something which is going to make sure and which is going to secure all the type of connections when you are actually online, right? It is always fast, it is hassle free online experience. So it is always recommended that you try to download and install a good firewall, so that while you are doing any type of online activity, it is going to secure all your different type of connections. Like these are the different references from where I have got this particular data. This is a major issue, like in terms of computer system security, we can say that the problems that we are actually facing these days, right? We are very much dependent, and definitely for measuring for securing our system, definitely we'll be requiring one or the other different type of ways. So it is with the help of the type of the measures that can be adapted, with the help of which you can say that you will be able to make your system or your software more secure, right? As we generally used to say that we often work with your CIA, right? CIA triad, you can say. This is what? This is something based on which we can make sure that only the authorized will be able to access the data. The only authorized will be able to do any sort of modification in the data. Whenever we want the data should be readily available to us. So this is something based on which we, or the goals that we generally want to achieve. Because we have already seen that like the attackers or the unauthorized person who are not the legitimate users try to access your data in somewhat or the other way by simply breaking the security concerns of your system. First, they'll try to enter into your system, and once they enter into your system, they'll do whatever they want to do with your system. Even if you know it or without your knownness, they'll be able to do it. So these are the different type of like the measures that we have actually that can be actually incorporated, so that we'll be able to safeguard and secure your system in a proper way. As I told you, students, these are the different type of references that actually I have used, and thank you so much.